We're here to protect you and the ones that you love. It's a good feeling to know that our efforts aren't going unnoticed.
It actually brought tears to my eyes to know that we have this support.
You're welcome. I must just say, you're welcome. It's stressful, but we're not going anywhere.
Welcome to another edition of Bucknell Men's Lacrosse Through the Decades. Tonight we have the decade of the 1970s. We've got some outstanding alumni guests joining head coach Frank Federaca and one of our current players, Nick Clarke. Nick is a senior midfielder from Green Bay, California, and we're really excited to have him on the call. We're excited to have four outstanding alums. My name's Todd Newcomb, and I want to thank Geisinger as our sponsor for this session. Geisinger has done an absolutely phenomenal job with the community throughout the pandemic, and also on a day-to-day basis, they do a great job with our student athletes here at Bucknell. So without any further ado, let me introduce our guest for tonight, and I'm going to start with Jim Nesbitt. Jim is from the class of 1977. He was an all-East Coast Conference selection in both 1975 and 1976. He was also a four-year letter winner and the team captain of the Bison football team, and he won the Albert E. Humphreys Award at the senior awards dinner. Our next guest from the class of 1977 as well is Don Shassian. Don was the team captain in 1977. He was also an all East Coast Conference selection. For him, it was 1976 and 1977. And Don's son, Brian, is a 2008 Bucknell grad. Our next guest from the class of 1979 is Tom Sanders. Tom was the team captain in 1979. And 41 years after graduation, he still holds the single game saves record of 34, which he set against Penn State in 1977. He ranks second with 664 career saves and sixth with a career save percentage of .609. He was an all East Coast Conference selection in 1979. He was a Division I honorable mention All-American in 1979. And Tom was elected to the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in the year 2000. And our final guest, also from the class of 1979, is Peter von Hoffman. Peter was the team captain in both 1978 and 79. He ranks second in career assists with 138 and third in career points with 220. 41 years after his graduation, he still holds a share of the single game points mark at 11, which he did against Penn State in that 1979 contest. He was an all East Coast Conference selection in 1976, 1977, 1978, and 1979, a clean sweep. He was the ECC Most Valuable Player in 1979, a Division I honorable mention All-American in 1977, and a Division I third team All-American in 79. He was a USILA North-South All-Star Game participant in 1979, and he won the Bison Club Award at the Senior Awards dinner. Pete was elected to the Bucknell Athletics Hall of Fame in 1984. So, Coach, we've got a great group. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Very exciting. I have a question, though, before we get going. Did you guys beat Penn State that year in 1979?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm so glad that those records weren't wasted.
We beat Penn State 3 out of the 4 years, and that was our Pete, and that was my last game.
Oh, really?
Out there at Penn State, it was a big win.
Awesome.
When we beat them, Tommy, they were ranked 6th in the country.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was in 1976. They were that was when the NCAA tournament was only 8 teams, and they were expecting to go, and we knocked them out. That was we always played them our last game of the year, and so we
gave us a winning season that year.
Awesome.
We were
6-5. The post was my friend that day. They must have hit the post 4 or 5 times, especially in the fourth quarter. Big win.
Goalie's best friend, Breeze.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to get started here. And so what it'll be, like Todd mentioned, I'll ask a question and all 4 of you guys will have an opportunity to answer it. And so I just want you guys to give us an update on what you've been doing since you've graduated from Bucknell, and tell us about your family and what you're doing and all that kind of good stuff. So I'm going to kind of go in random order here. I'm going to start with von Hoffman first.
I've had a lot of different changes in what I've been doing. I was a teacher coming right out of school, got married, had our first son, decided I better make some money. I went to Wall Street for 20 years, was in 9/11. After 9/11, my wife and I sat down and just said, maybe it's time to go back to teaching. And so I went back to teaching. I'm now in my 18th year of that. Probably another year or two left teaching. Own a couple businesses in town, a wine store and a deli, with my son and some friends and stuff like that. Have 3 kids, 3 grandkids, been married for 38 years. That's been, that's it.
Awesome. Is that the same son didn't your son go to Marist, Pete, and play lacrosse?
Bobby was my youngest son. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
my oldest son. But
Okay.
my younger son's involved too.
I got you. Okay.
Thank
All right. Tom Sanders, please, let's go.
Well, I pretty much a couple of years after school, I went to Penn State. I got my master's degree out there, and I actually was coached out there with Glenn Thiel for a couple of years, and had a great time doing that. But after that, I was in business for down at Citibank for more than 16 years, and it was just before 9/11. It was in the late 1999 that I decided, I had enough, and I had my plan B was to become a teacher, and I had been taking teaching courses at night. And in 2000, I resigned from Citibank and became a teacher. And so I'm starting my 20th year at Bronxville Middle School in New York. And Frank, you have one of my former students as your big, strong attackman there.
Austin Terry.
So we're Bronxville, and lots of Bronxville students are attending Bucknell right now. So I made the career switch and I haven't looked back. And love teaching.
And you also help coach, don't you, Tom?
Yeah, I coached the middle school team, the modified team. So
Yeah.
The varsity team has done really well. They won the New York State Championship in 2014, and had a very successful program. And but yeah, I'm on the pulse of the youth lacrosse in Bronxville.
That's right. It's awesome. Good job, man. Let's go, Chief. Let's go, Don Shassian.
Hi. Right out of college, moved to New York. Was with Arthur Anderson for about 16 years as a partner. During that period, Pam Heller is my wife. Pam is a 3-sport letter woman at Bucknell. We've got 2 sons, Brian and Danny, not with us, unfortunately, in this crazy period, but they're doing great. Brian, the older one, is married. After Anderson for 16 years, I've been a public company CFO of 4 companies. And after about 41 years in working, I retired in June of 18. But I wouldn't say I'm retired because I'm full-time doing consulting for a couple of private equity firms. And literally, it's been fun, good experience. Still getting a lot of exercise, road biking, playing golf, cross-country skiing in the winter. And we really love it. We live in Rybrook, New York, which is in Westchester County. We've been here a few years after we got married. So that's about it.
That's great. And I'm fortunate enough to see Don's name and his wife Pam's name outside my door because they helped donate to the new facility back in probably like 2000 or whenever that was. And so it's great to see your name every single day, Don. Thank you.
Frank, can I jump back in for a second?
Yeah.
I did not overlook my family, my very important family.
There you go.
My wife and I have been married for 33 years. We met at Citibank. We have 2 kids. Well, my son graduated from Cornell in 2015. My daughter just graduated from Loyola in this spring. So when Bucknell and Loyola get together, we go to the games. We had big plans to go down to Loyola this year, and then that was the BU game was canceled, but I guess the weekend of March 14th is when essentially the NCAA Division I got canceled. So we had plans to see you guys play.
Yeah, that's right. March 12th, Thursday, March 12th was D-Day.
Yeah.
We were all set. We were ready to go. We had prepared for them. It was unfortunate. We prepared for Boston for like 8-9 days, and then we had to cancel that game, and then we had to move on and prepare for Loyola, and didn't get to play that one. But would have loved to have seen you there, Tom. Let's go with Jim. You can bring this one home for us.
Did I just unmute? Can you hear me?
You're good.
Okay. So after Bucknell, I started a company in the office products industry and office furniture. And I sold in 1999 and took a couple of years off, which I probably shouldn't have done. But October after 9/11, I entered the financial services business, and I'm a partner in a firm called High Point Financial back here outside of Philadelphia, and I have a financial services practice. And my 4 children, 3 of them from a prior marriage, 3 boys and a daughter. I've got 3 grandchildren, but at my house right now is my 16-year-old, who's a very good student, unlike his dad, at Haverford School. And without breaking any of your recruiting violations, Coach, his first name's R-O-R-Y. So
Rory.
you might want to check him out. He's entering his he's going to be a sophomore. It's so, they've lost everything. They lost their whole season last year, as you know.
Yeah.
So Jim, you still live on the main line, and your son went to Haverford School as you did.
Yes, that is correct. It was my dream to have him. We were actually down in Baltimore for 5 or 6 years. I ran my practice out of Baltimore because my wife got a job with T. Rice.
Yeah.
So we came back 2 years ago and back to the homestead, and she's able to work out of the house, and I'm able to run my practice a lot more efficiently being here. And I'm able to send him to Haverford, which is, I'm rather fond of that. So it's all good. All good.
Awesome. All right, we're going to go right into your guys' recruitment back in the day. If you could take us back and give us an idea how you landed at Bucknell, and if you actually were recruited, and if so, how did that go? Let's go with Tom Sanders first.
A lot of numbers coming up here. I'm not sure how much recruiting was done. But for me, I didn't pick up the game until my junior year of high school, which would mean I would not be a college lacrosse player. And so when I was looking at colleges, we had an undefeated team my junior year. I mean, we played at a small private school, and so nobody had heard of us. And so when I was looking at colleges, my high school coach, his name was Bruce Hislop, would call up. He'd say, "What college are you going to look at?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to Bucknell." He goes, "Oh, let me make an introduction for you." And so we had an appointment to see Sid, and Sid back then was assistant football coach, and in the fall he put in a lot of time there. And so we showed up on the second floor of Davis Gym, and Sid had all the blinds pulled down, and he's using this black and white film, the old, not videotape, but actually real film. And we knocked on the door, and the lights were out. And I'm not even sure Sid got up and turned on the lights because he was busy. And we were talking for a few minutes, and then it was kind of dark, and Sid asked the question, "Well, what was your record last year?" And I said, "Well, we were 10-0, undefeated." And I didn't notice it, but my dad was watching Sid, and my dad said, at that point, Sid kind of pay attention a little bit more. So that's, I had the same thing. I went up to Colgate, the same thing. And my dad was my father was a college professor, a geologist. And so he was giving a lecture down at Johns Hopkins. And so the same thing happened down at Johns Hopkins. And, I went down there. I was totally intimidated. And Henry Ciccarone, who was the head coach then, didn't have time for me. So a guy named Willie Scroggs who was the assistant coach, who won a couple of national championships at North Carolina. he took me around, was very nice, and he essentially told me, well, if you want to play lacrosse in college, don't come here. They had absolutely no interest. So, I showed up kind of, one of, I don't know how many freshmen we had players, but, Sid didn't, Sid had not reached out. I reached out to, my coach reached out to Sid. And that was kind of the recruiting process. That, in the fall, Sid did football, and in the spring he did lacrosse. And I just, loved the campus. I showed up on a October day with the sun was shining and all the leaves were changing, and I fell in love with the campus. And I kind of just like everybody else, I think pretty much kind of walked on. And I was fortunate enough to. There was a goalie named Scott Johnson who was the senior, but Scotty was shell shocked. He wanted to get out of the goal so bad, and he was just waiting for somebody to come along that could jump in the goal. And so Scotty ended up playing crease attack for us my freshman year, his senior year, and so he was the starting crease attackman on the other end of the field, and shot on me every day in practice. I think he loved that. That he didn't have to get shot on, that he was doing the shooting. And so, I stepped right in my freshman year. But recruiting, at least from personally, did not exist.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's been a common theme in the 60s and 70s and even part of the 80s. So we're lucky that we got you. Let's go to Sheik. Let's go to Don Shashin. Give us your background with that.
Similar story. I think I started in 10th grade in high school, but Pennsylvania lacrosse was not a big thing. I was actually recruited to play football at Bucknell by Fred Pender, as I recall the gentleman. And I went to one evening at, I think it was Conestoga High School. Sid was the coach who was there, and we were chatting and talking to his coach of lacrosse. And I said, well, I really play lacrosse. It was sort of nice dialogue we had. I played freshman football. I had lost a ton of weight before I got there my freshman year, so I was out of my league. But I do remember about 2 weeks or 3 weeks into school, maybe mid-September, I came out of the UC and I saw two guys throwing a ball around on the field. So I ran up to my dorm at 410 Tracks, grabbed my stick, and came down and ended up throwing a ball around with Kevin Cook and Mark Feraldo. And that convinced me that my skills are good enough. I can work with these guys and it'd be a lot of fun. And so I obviously went through freshman football, but then had to get indoctrinated in spring lacrosse. But it was fun, but not recruited. I was there for football for the most part and only played 1 year of football, freshman football, that was it. But enjoyed the 4 years, sort of walked on and started every game. Except one game where I had a broken collarbone, but ended up Sid put me in after the first couple of minutes, and enjoyed every minute. And Tommy's comment about Scotty Johnson is hysterical because I played crease defense, and so in practice, I always played practice like it was a game, and I used to beat the hell out of him. I just used to beat up. He had this way of running with very, very short steps. If you guys recall, it's like a little running like a little rabbit. And I used to just watch his eyes because when a ball would come to him, his eyes would just go like this. Just used to have a good time with Scotty. Great guy, super guy.
It's good stuff. All right, Jim Nesbitt, take us through it.
So I was recruited to play football at Bucknell by Fred Pender, and I was fortunate enough to play varsity in my freshman year. It was the first year they had allowed freshmen back to varsity after like 25 years. So I played varsity, and then I went and played.
And Jim, you were the only freshman who did play varsity, am I right?
Yes, I believe I was. But yes, I was. So, Sid was the defensive back coach, and I was a linebacker, but we spent a lot of time with the defensive backs, obviously, because we had to coordinate. And I went to secure a starting position in freshman spring ball for varsity for the next year. And so I went through spring ball, which, Donnie, I thought was probably the biggest crime ever committed in college football, where they don't care if you got hurt or not, you just beat the hell out of each other for 4 weeks. And I finished it and I secured my spot on the, my starting spot. And I'm walking off the field at the last practice of spring football. And I said to Coach Jameson, I said, "Hey, Coach, I see those lacrosse guys going down to coach lacrosse from here." I said, "Can I come out and run with you?" And he looked at me and his eyes lit up and he said, "Practice is at 3:00 tomorrow." And I practiced 2 practices and we're playing Lafayette. I got a uniform 2 days later. And in the second quarter, he says, "Get in there." It was like, I hadn't touched a stick in a year. So that's how it started for lacrosse. But, the difference between lacrosse and football is, lacrosse is such a great game. You love to practice lacrosse. I have never met anybody in my life that wants to practice football. You love to play the game, but you don't like to practice. But in lacrosse, it's much different. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. You nailed it, Jim. All right, let's go with Bonhoeff. You must have been recruited.
No, I was I was recruited to Hobart, and I was going to go to Hobart. That was where I wanted to go. There's a line of Montclair guys going at that point, and I was in the line, and I was looking forward to going there. And a guy in Montclair knew that I had pretty good grades, and he approached me about Bucknell. And he said, "Look, it's a great school. You'd love it. Lacrosse is good. You'd fit right in." And so he taught me a bunch of times. And so I applied to Bucknell, not really thinking I was going to get in. My grades weren't as good as they should have been to get into Bucknell. And I was also recruited to Washington Lee, which was Jack Emmer at that point. And, but I wasn't going that far away. And so I got into both schools, Hobart and Bucknell. I'm thinking I'm going to Hobart. And my high school coach calls me in the office and he says, "I have a phone call for you here." And it was Sid Jameson. This is probably the first time I spoke to Sid was on that call. And all he said was, "So you're accepted at Bucknell. You're coming to Bucknell, right?" And I was like, I don't know, Coach. I haven't really thought that much about it yet because I didn't know what to say. I go home and my father says, "You're going to Bucknell." And I said, "Really?" He goes, "Get better school, academics, the whole thing. It's going to be perfect for you. You're going to Bucknell. And if I'm paying, you're going. That's what it's going to be." So I had never seen Bucknell. I had never talked to Coach until that day in the office. But I came to campus, and obviously it's a beautiful campus, so you're stunned the first time you see it. But the first day, I went over to Coach's office, and same thing Tom said. He's up in his office there. It's a dark room, it's a small desk, and he's sitting there staring at his stuff at his desk. And I introduced myself to him. He goes, "Oh, Peter," and he sits me down, and for 2 hours he teaches me his system. Literally the first day of school, he gave me 2-hour lesson on what he's going to do, and how we're using picks, we're using this and that, and I was like, "Wow, okay." So from then on, it was like I knew it was the right place to be, but it was great. I was not officially recruited there, except by a guy from Montclair that knew that I was pretty good and had pretty good grades.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. One of our greatest players of all time. But, Sid giving you a little phone call made a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
And your dad knew what he was talking about. I'm a Hobart alum, and I do believe that Bucknell's education is better than Hobart's. I mean, I have to give a shout out to the BU people. So
Frank, this call is being recorded. They'll see.
Yeah.
Eva.
But there'll be Bucknellians watching and not a whole lot of statesmen watching. All right, we're gonna pivot over to Nick Clarke. He's got a question that he wants to ask you guys, and then I'll ask one of you to start us off with it.
All righty. So I have a question. What advice would you give to me or any other players that are in our program today about the college lacrosse experience at Bucknell?
Let's go with Don Chassie.
Sort of my comment earlier, and I think Jim mentioned it. When you get out of school, you don't have a lot of practice. you're sort of put into whatever position you're going into, and you may move in a bunch of different jobs or whatever, but you've got to take that first day and you got to pour everything you can into it to learn and apply yourself. And it's sort of the same thing in lacrosse. You got to do it on practice. You got to do it every day. You got to learn all the situations of what to do on the what ifs that happen in practice. And you've got to be on your game on practice to be able to apply it all the time. You get out, you got to do the same philosophy. You got to soak things up. You got to ask people a lot of things. You just got to intellectually curious to really understand the business, like you were trying to understand the game, and apply yourself to really utilize that knowledge to be successful. Lacrosse is not just a stick work game and a speed game. It's smarts. It's thinking and how to play angles, how to play picks, how to play 2-on-1. And in business, you got to do the same thing. You got to figure out how am I going to help this team or this company I'm working with, how they can be successful. And you got to constantly intellectually curious to push yourself and use that as an angle in business. And lastly, teamwork's important. It is important to no end in anything you're ever going to do. And as you rely upon guys on the field, you're going to rely upon men and women in business, and you got to build those relationships and savor them for the rest of your life.
Very cool. All right, Pete, you can go next, please.
Nick, I would have two things. One is that don't ever underestimate how one person can change a game. I think too often we get in college and you get on the field and you see the bright red uniforms of Rutgers or the bright orange uniforms of Syracuse, and you assume the game's already over before Hobart, and you assume the game's already over before you even start. And the truth is that one person can change everything. Breeze, you had 30-odd saves against Penn State as a sophomore. That game would not have won if Breeze didn't do that. But even just faceoffs, even just a single hit. And I remember Jim Nesbitt hitting actually 3 guys in one play. I remember that against Dickinson, and they walked off the field. It was a scrimmage, and they said he hit one kid, got up, hit another kid, got up, hit another kid on a ground ball, and they literally walked off the field and said, "We're not playing," and they quit right there. But the first message is just that one person can change a game and change how things happen. And if you don't believe that, then you might not make the effort that you could at that moment to change everything around you. And then the other one was a little bit about what Sheik said, but one person can make all the difference. But if that one person doesn't feel that they're part of the overall team and that they're all part of it together, it's not going to work. You just everyone's got to just say the team's first, I'm second,
It's
beautiful.
I'm not sure if when this was, but I'm not sure Jim may remember. We had a game against University of Maryland, Baltimore campus down there where we were getting pummeled going into the fourth quarter. I think we were down like 10-1. And Jimmy Ball got into an unbelievable zone of just doing whip shots from the restraining line. And I think he was like 6 or 7 goals straight and got us back in that game. I think we may have lost it, but it was an amazing situation how one person I think he was riding the bench for a while and just came off the bench to do that.
That was John Miller.
John Miller. I'm sorry. Right. Right.
With a couple minutes to go, we were losing. And this is when Dickie Dell was coaching. It was the University of Baltimore. We were losing 10-0 with like 2 minutes to go in the third quarter, and we ended up losing 10-9. And yep. Coach put him in the game and just said, just let it loose.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
We had the chance to win, or at least tie the game, in the last minute. We didn't do it, but that was, I remember that game. I mean, I remember every game that we lost. I don't remember a lot of them that we won, but every game we lost, I can remember. It's weird about that.
That's awesome. All right, well, Breeze, I'll let you continue the conversation. Why don't you tell Nick what your thoughts are?
Just what I would say is it may not seem like it, but those 4 years are going to go by fast, and just enjoy it, and enjoy your teammates, enjoy the time around them, and you know, you don't get a do-over. And so put your heart into it. You know, as Don said, you know, practice, you know, learn, you know, the schemes, you know, because, you know, even if you're not a starting player, you know, if you don't know what's going on, you're not going to see the field. So, you know, you gotta, what, you know, what you do in practice, you know, will pay off when you get in the game. And so enjoy it and enjoy your teammates and you know, and enjoy your 4 years at Bucknell, because, you know, you don't get that time ever again.
Well said. All right, Jim, you can finish this one up, please.
Nick, are we recruiting you to come to Bucknell, or you're already there, right?
Oh no, I'm a senior here.
You're a senior. So
Yeah.
you're going to be going out into the real world here, you know, pretty soon. And I think that, you know, beyond Bucknell, you learned an awful lot of things at Bucknell, how to do hard work in the classroom, but you also learned how to work hard athletically. If you got in the field, you definitely learn those lessons, and you can take those lessons right into the corporate world or wherever you want to go. And that's the most important thing is, you know, habits form the future. And if you have good work habits, you just take them with you, and don't underestimate, you know, the Bucknell Alumni Association, especially the Lacrosse Alumni Association. You decide what you want to do or what you think you might want to do. Start to reach out to, you know, ex-Bucknell lacrosse players that, you know, are in that industry, and ask them for a meeting or, you know, Zoom, whatever, and utilize them. That's the most, you know, important thing you can take away. You're never going to make a penny playing lacrosse, or are you? Maybe you are, I don't know. So those guys in that PPL league, I don't know how much they make, but, you know, but I think that, you know, you just take the lessons you learned on the lacrosse field, apply them to the real world, and you'll do fine.
That's great, Jim. Yeah, Nick is a starter for us. We moved him over to short stick defensive midfielder because he's so athletic and he's so great between the lines. That's the restraining lines. And I don't know, I guess, what was it, Ohio State, Nick, where you, as a defensive player, had about 4 assists, like 1 goal and three assists or something that day?
Yeah, that was Ohio State. The attackmen were definitely helping me out that day by finishing those shots. But yeah.
Yeah, Nick's very unselfish. He's a great team player, and he'll most likely be voted in as a captain this year. And you know, he's from out in the West Coast, and we're real happy to have him. And you know, that's all really good advice, guys. Thank you for that. We're gonna now lighten it up a little bit, and I'm going to ask you guys to share a Coach J story, and then maybe give us an idea of what kind of person he's been to you, and what kind of impact he had on all you guys. And we'll let Breeze go first on this one.
All right. Sid, the things that always crack me up is just remembering him just taking his hat off, throwing it on the ground, and just jumping up and down on it. He would just get so angry, and that hat just took abuse. But he, you know, Sid was a perfectionist. We ran rides and clears, and we were, you know, we did all this stuff in preparation for our, you know, our next opponent. And I you know, as I mentioned before, I started as a freshman, and there was one stretch where we, the freshman year, had 5 scrimmages, and there were no NCAA, you know, at least as far as I could tell, limitations on how often you could scrimmage. And there was one week we had 5 scrimmages. Well, you know, one right every day. A different school was coming through, you know, upstate New York. They were going down.
Spring break, right, Tommy?
Yeah, it was their spring. Yeah, it was our spring break, their spring breaks.
Right.
And every day there was a team that we were scrimmaging, and I remember it was Ohio State we were scrimmaging, and we were you know, it was the middle of a scrimmage, and, you know, Sid was reffing. We didn't have, you know, refs come in, so Sid was out there reffing, and we were clearing the ball, and somebody threw me the ball, and we had practiced over and over again. As soon as you get the ball, you look in the opposite side, so you redirect the ball as fast as you can. And I didn't do it fast enough, and Sid just blew the whistle, stopped the scrimmage, and threw me off the field. He goes, "Get off the field. You haven't learned this. The other team is gonna the ride will get there. We won't clear the ball." And so, I was totally humiliated. I was embarrassed. I was pissed at Sid. And, but it was something that I never forgot. And then, the next time I'm in there, the ball comes to me and it's right out, looking for the defenseman in the opposite corner. And, but, Sid was hard on you. But you grew, after 4 years, Sid was a great friend. I've been to 2 of his Hall of Fame inductions, one down in Philadelphia and the other one, that was the Pennsylvania chapter of U.S. Lacrosse. And then a couple years ago, he got inducted into he was the coach of the U.S. College Coaches Hall of Fame. Sid's a great friend. I talk to him, occasionally. And, I learned a lot of life lessons from him about being prepared and anticipating what's going on. And so that was Sid. Sid was always wanted you to do everything right. And he would take it out on you if you didn't. Made you a better player, though, that's for sure.
Yes, I learned that from him as well. Nick knows that a little bit. So let's go right to Jim Nesbitt.
Oh, you want me to tell some stories about Sid? See, I have them both on the football side and on the lacrosse side. Hey, so hey Donnie, what was our attackman's name? Bobby Lane? Was it Laynard or Lane?
Laner.
Bobby Lane.
Yep.
Laynard. And Sid called him Lane. And we were going to play Washington College, and so we go down on a Friday night and we check into the Holiday Inn. And of course, Bobby says to me, "Nez, come on, go to the bar." I said, Bobby, he was the captain of the team. He was the captain of the team. I said, "Bobby, I don't think that's a really good idea." He goes, No, we'll just have one beer. It'll be fine. So we go into the bar, we sit down, we have a beer. And sure enough, here comes Sid strolling into the bar in a leisure suit, if you know what that is, by the way, with his collar open. And so, so this is not only one of my favorite Sid stories, but also my most admired Bucknell lacrosse player story, because I'm thinking we are going to get thrown off the team. We're not going to be able to play. But then I think, well, Bobby's the captain of the team, and and I'm pretty good. We're not going to have much of a chance against Washington College without the 2 of us. So here's where my hero lacrosse player comes in, Bobby Lane. Sid walks up. He says, "I was really hoping, boys, that I wasn't going to find any of you guys in here." And Bobby looks at Sid and says, "Hey, coach, why don't you sit down and have a beer with us?" And I thought that was the smoothest thing. And he wasn't happy about it, and he was nervous, but he did sit down and have a beer. And after we got beat 17-2 by Washington College the next day, he gets into the locker room and he starts in one of his Sid rants that goes on. Tommy, how long does Sid rants go on? They could go on for 30 minutes and you could never hear anybody scream for that long. You can't imagine that little guy could get that out of his mouth. He screamed about certain players not taking the game seriously and better not ever find anybody in bar the night before. He didn't say anybody's name, right? Bobby Lane and I kind of looking at each other, and the next week went to play Hobart, and there was no Holiday Inn. We had to meet the bus at 4:45 in the morning, get in the bus, and drive up to Hobart to play the game, which we also lost about 17-2. But but that was one Sid story. A Sid rant could go on. He did it at halftime of football, and he did it, on occasion. But when he got off on a rant, it went on and on and on, and you just put your head down and nobody said a word. They just listened and took it. It was quite a coaching moment in my life. Never forget.
One of those bus rides back from Hobart after getting spanked up there, Sid says, "You guys were awful. I don't want to hear a peep on this bus ride." And it was like 5 hours of
Remember the chicken wire and then throwing beer on us when we walked out on the field? You know, when you walked
before my time.
At Hobart, yeah.
The dead
Yeah, you walked out on the field and they had chicken wire, you know, above your head, and I was going, well, I wonder what that chicken wire is for. And when like a keg of beer comes down in our faces on our way out onto the field.
And they would count by fives, 5, 10, 15, 20. We want more, like you're saying.
Hobart, it was the worst place to play. The fans were right up on the line, and they were beating you up about your mother, your sister, your girlfriend. I mean, they didn't let you go. They were tough.
So remember what happened? Remember what happened the next year? We went back to our fraternities and we told them all about it, and they all came out and did the same thing.
Yeah.
Hobart was averaging 24 goals a game, and they beat us 2-1.
Wow.
Tough game. Yeah.
Remember that, Tommy?
Old school. They used
Sanders holds them to 2 goals and loses.
That must have been before my time, because Hobart,
Really?
the bulbs burned out on the scoreboard when I was playing them.
Okay, so that was a year before you got there. That was my, you know, but it was unbelievable. They were walking off the field shaking their heads. They couldn't believe they were held to 2 goals.
Wow.
Donnie remembers that. He's a big part of that.
Well, they used to throw fish out onto the field, and that's why they had that chicken wire there, so you guys didn't get hit by fish. But I guess it didn't stop the beer, that wire fence.
Beer came, and you know, it didn't help that the whole second half, while we were getting crushed, they were all singing Sydney, Sydney.
Yeah.
He did not like that at all.
He was not happy.
All right, Pete, you got a Coach J story?
I got 2. So we're freshmen. We're playing Rutgers. They're ranked top 5 in the nation or something like that. They come out with their 50 guys of the team, bright red. You know, we've got our 25 guys who are wearing their football uniforms.
And Peter, you know who the crease attackman was?
No.
John Danowski.
Is that right? Wow.
He was the crease attackman. I played against him. He graduated same year as me.
So we get on the field and everyone's nervous. And at that time, the Rutgers was just going to run everybody off the field. And we go down probably 6-0 in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Fast break, face off, fast break. And Johnny Miller is on the field. He's playing. You remember this, Tom? and he has a ground ball on a face-off. It's like, we finally could get the ball, ground ball. And he overruns it. They pick the ball up and go down, score again. So he calls a time, and Sid calls a timeout. He calls everybody in, and he looks at Johnny and goes, "What the hell's wrong with you?" You know, and he's screaming at him. And Johnny looks and goes, "I'm scared, Coach."
I'm scared.
I'm scared. And Sid sat there, and he looked and he goes, "Okay, at least we're being honest." And then from then on, we calmed down. We actually played okay. But it was so funny watching. He just ripped them, and Johnny was honest with him. I'm scared. The second story was Syracuse our senior year, sort of the reverse of it. They're ranked top 3 in the nation. We have a shot at getting ranked, and we hold them. We end up losing 11-10. But it's 10-10 or 9-10 or something like that. In the fourth quarter, we get a penalty. And Sid calls a timeout. And he calls us in. And he says, "Look, here's exactly what they're going to do. It's going to go boom, boom, bang, ding. They're going to try to cross here and chuck at. I want you to step into that hole. The ball will be coming to you. Just take it and go." We go on the field. They go boom, boom, bang, cross. Chuck steps in, takes the ball, runs up, and unfortunately, I think I had a shot to score on the crease. I missed it, but I never forgot that. And after that, I talked to Sid, and I said, "How did you know they were going to do that?" And Fed, this is a compliment to you too in this way, because you understand this when I say it. He said, when you coach at Bucknell, you have to outcoach everyone, because you know you step on the field. They had 12, 15 recruits. They had Indians. They had all these guys doing that. You know, And he said, if you don't anticipate what they're doing and know what they're about to do, you're going to lose by a lot. And we ended up losing 11-10, but I think that broke us into the ranks for the first time.
Wow, that's awesome.
And we were winning that. We were winning that whole game,
Oh,
and we lost in the last like 2 minutes.
well, it's good to be in those. You like to win them, but
And they were mad. Eamon McEnany, the Cornell legend, was assistant coach for them, and he at the end of the game said, "You know what? We're lucky to get out of here with a win. These guys are not going to lose another game this year." And you know, he says we weren't ready to play, and they were. And it was our opening game. And it was I think they were, as Pete said, they were ranked third. And it was.
And the defenseman that covered me was John Desco.
Don Desco, yep.
Yeah.
wow. And was that game up at Syracuse?
No,
that was
on the field.
On the field.
With the sofas.
It was probably in the mud too, wasn't it?
Probably. Always was.
Yeah, no, that time of year. All right, Don, what do you got there?
I don't think I've got any good stories. I always used to hear about Sid throwing his hat down and jumping on it. When I was playing the game, I was just playing the game. And I sort of tuned him out a lot, but I used to hear great stories about it. But the thing that I do want to mention is the senior year, I was named captain, and I went in to chat with him about what he wants me to do and how can I help. And we sort of talked a little bit about coaching philosophies. The only time we really talked about this. I said, how do you want to approach this? And he basically said you need to look at each player, you need to figure out each player's strengths and weaknesses, and you need to help them with the weaknesses, but you need to exploit the positives they got. Every individual, whether they're a starter or they're on the bench, and you need to really understand them. And he said, what I do through spring ball is I'm really trying to understand everybody's strengths and weaknesses. And I can't make someone who's got a really bad weakness a superstar to that, but I can exploit their strength. And we can figure out how do we minimize the risk of that weakness. And it was a really nice strategic discussion that I sort of took into that season, and obviously I've done that in a career going forward, is always trying to, how do you manage people to be better? And I found that was really interesting, and he's a great guy, and I feel honored to have played with him.
Well, that's great. I'm going to go right to Nick's last question because he does have his Zoom in 6 minutes. And then
I actually can stay longer. I emailed my professor, and he's letting me go in the later section tonight.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm going to have you ask your questions now.
Okay.
Anyway, and you obviously can stay on the whole time to listen to them. So go ahead, take it away.
Sounds good. So Jim touched on this a little bit earlier, but what advice would you give me and my teammates about networking and finding a job right after Bucknell, as I'm going through that now?
Yeah, that's you, Jim Nesbitt. We're going to go with you first because you already started talking about this.
Well, Nick, what's the hurry about getting a job? I mean, don't the kids just go to Europe and walk around for like a year now? And I'm just kidding. Listen, I learned at a very young age, and I went to a high school where a person at that high school, an alum, will take your call and give you a meeting anytime you ask. And it's just a very unique situation. But the key there is you've got to ask. And if you don't go out and self-advocate for yourself, don't let the world point you and take you down the road. You need to take yourself down the road, and you need to self-advocate, and you need to ask people that have experience and who have been through it before if they wouldn't mind helping out a young 22-year-old kid. And I don't know anybody that would say no. So, but you got to ask.
That's great. That's great advice, Jim. We'll go over to Don with this next part of it. Yeah. So Don.
I think Jim's right, spot on. you've got to ask, but you've got to also be tenacious in talking to a lot of people. If you know where you want to go, what sort of role you want to be in, and you can develop a list of potential people to talk to, you essentially just want to get their idea of what ideas you can find opportunities you should talk to, and just continue to just call and talk about yourself. Let them talk about their career, and ask for guidance. But you got to ask, who would you suggest I talk to, or what company should I go to? And don't expect people to come to you. You got to go out. You got to push, as Jim mentioned. I also, most people, I think as you heard us, nobody's been with the same company since they got out of school. Not everybody's been doing the same line of work when they got out of school. And don't panic about, I have to find the perfect job. I've got to do this. No, I think the first job you have is important because it just gets your feet wet. It gets you out in the business world, enables you to talk to people, work with some businesses, and maybe through trial and error, help you think through where you want to go. But just, whether it's a sales job or it's an analytical job, whatever it is, but just, try to get something and make the best of it and sort of explore. But don't panic about what the job is or isn't, and don't panic about what you're making dollar-wise, because that makes zero impact whatsoever on the rest of your life. Experience, I would encourage, if you can, to get hooked up to larger companies out of the gate, because larger companies can give you more variety of experience, but that's tough if you can't do that. But I think going with large companies can sometimes just get you a lot of more doors to see and opportunities to see, and you can knock off what you like, you don't like, and you can learn from more people, because you'll find in your career, for people you work for, you will learn a lot, and you will emulate the good traits of people you work for, and you will make sure you do not emulate the traits of people you've worked for who are just not good people. But you will learn, and you'll grow and take that to the next job.
Awesome. Pete.
I'd say pick a direction, and don't worry what that direction is going to take you. I think the biggest mistake some people make is they don't get started. I went into teaching and coaching, and I realized that wasn't going to work for having a family. And so I made some calls, took a job on Wall Street. My last job on Wall Street, I was at Merrill Lynch, and I sat down at the trading desk, and there's about 30 people there. And one of the guys, Tom Kane, who's a Bucknell grad, says, "Guess how many of us are from Bucknell?" I said, "I don't know how many." He goes, 8. 8 out of 30 were from Bucknell. And I mean, everywhere you go, if you pick a direction, you are going to run into people from Bucknell. So I'd say, don't worry about so much what it is that you're going to do and all that stuff, because that's going to change as you change and as you grow. But don't stand with your feet flat. Pick a direction and move, and you'll be surprised how it's going to take you where you want to be.
That's awesome. All right, Breeze.
I personally, I've never been in a position to hire anybody. So, but I've known people that, are hiring people. So you never know, connections, are really important. So I would say that you be outgoing, be polite, follow up with people, stay in touch. And as everybody else has said, nobody's gonna, just call you up and say, "Hey, I got a job for you." You have to be, you have to sell yourself. But I mean, I've been, after some of the games I've attended, I've been to those, the parent tailgates, which are like amazing. I mean, the old $3 at McDonald's, what happened to those days? The parents put on a huge spread these days, but you never know who's mom or dad there, what they do. So, don't just hang back with, 2 of your friends and be wallflowers. Meet the parents and just be outgoing, and because you never know what they might be able to do for you. And, if they don't know somebody, it's, if they're connected and they say, "Well, geez, I'm looking for such and such a young, analyst or something, if you've made an impression on somebody, you can get a referral out of that. So I would, sell yourself, be outgoing. And that was not me. If there's anything that I would reflect on and want to do over again, it would be, learning how to sell myself better. I mean, I was very comfortable doing it from a lacrosse point of view, but from a career point of view, that took a lot of work, and I was out of my comfort zone.
Hey, Coach, can I add one thing there?
What's that?
Can I just add one thing real quick?
Absolutely.
So, Nick, I used this line on my first job on Wall Street, and at the time I didn't really think much about it, but since then people have said it to me so many times. But I was at the point where I could get a job, but there were other people trying to get it. I was going to get paid $15,000, and the guy that was hiring me said, give me a reason why I should hire you and not these other guys. And I said to him, because you have no risk. What's your risk? You hire me, you pay me $15,000. If you're wrong, you lost $15,000. If you're right, I make you $1 million. Where's your risk? I'd make that trade every single day. And the guy, he literally hired me on that line.
Nice. You got to find out what makes them tick.
Yeah.
And have confidence in yourself. Good stuff.
What are you saying, Pete? You came cheap?
Yeah, I did.
I thought you were going to say, because I'll do it for $14,000. All right. Well, listen, Nick, you can go ahead and try to get on that Zoom if you want, buddy. Thanks for being on with us. Todd, do you want to say anything to him as he heads out?
Nick, I really appreciate it, and we're glad you and your teammates are back on campus, and wish you the best of luck this semester. And we're all keeping our fingers crossed that you guys are going to be playing competitive lacrosse games this spring, and good luck with that.
Yeah, and I would just say thank you for including me on the Zoom. Nice to meet all you guys, and hopefully see you guys at a game in the spring or something like that.
And Nick, thanks for joining us, and say hi to Alston Terry for me.
Will do.
Look.
See you, buddy.
Good luck, Nick.
All right, guys. Now, little trip down memory lane here. What was your most memorable experience with the lacrosse program at Bucknell? And we will go right to Pete Von Hoffman to get us started.
Well, I thought a lot about this week, and I know this is going to sound sort of like, how could that be it? But it really is it. And Don, you'll understand this when I say it. But freshman year, the third defenseman was Mark Feraldo, and he's also the guy that I would say, if there's a person that I think back on a lot, it's him. He came up to me in practice the first part of the season, and in the fall actually, and he asked me if I was going to work him in practice. I was like, of course I'm going to work in practice. No, he said, that's not good enough. And he slashed me across my chest. And he said, and he got me as mad as you could get at somebody. And that whole practice, we went at it. And after practice, he said, that's what practice is supposed to be like. And I know, Donnie, you were the same way, especially with Scotty. But that meant a lot. And then at the end of that season, and I don't know if you guys remember us having lunch before the Penn State game, but we were 5-5. Everyone's nervous. It's Penn State. They're going to make the playoffs. There's only 8 teams in it, all that stuff. And Aldo stands up and he swears at us. He goes, "Oh, you motherfuckers, you guys are just," sorry about that. "Oh, you guys are just going into this game to lose on purpose. You already know you're going to lose." He said, "I'm not taking this stuff sitting down. We're winning this game today." And he walks out of the room. And then we end up winning, 6-5. But Aldo was, that experience with him was amazing. Every day he came out to practice, he said, "Do I have to slash you?" Every day. If I didn't work hard, he came up and hit me.
That's awesome, man. That's old school right there.
Oh, yeah.
I was at that lunch in the cafeteria. Pete and I, and maybe John Miller, but we were the only 2 freshmen that were playing a lot. And it was there were a lot of seniors, a lot of juniors on that team. And I remember being in the cafeteria. We were sitting around with the seniors, and I don't remember who it was. It's just somebody said, "You know what? I've been here 4 years. This is our last game today. We've never won a game we weren't supposed to win." And that's what Mark Feraldo just said, "Hey, we're winning this game." And we went out that day and that afternoon, right outside the cafeteria there on the old field, and we did win that game 6-5. That's one of the games that I remember winning.
Wow. So was the Langone Center there yet then in this, mid to late 70s, late 70s?
Was who there?
The Langone Center where the
The UC was built in 1970.
Oh,
It was referred to as the University Center.
okay.
Yeah, but the Langone Center was under construction when I graduated. That was the athletic facility.
Oh, that was the field house.
The field house. Field house.
Yes. Right?
Yes,
Yeah,
field
well,
house.
the University Center is also the Lane Langone Center. We
Okay.
call it the LC, but I think that was already up then. That's the cafeteria you're talking about. Because I like to go back and try to figure out what buildings were actually there when you guys played, and you guys had a scoreboard on the side of the building where the pool was, right?
Yes.
We had no scoreboard.
No, there was no scoreboard. It was a little.
Yes, there was, guys. Yes, there was.
No, that was put up later. But first year I was playing, they had a little. It was like high school. They flipped a little.
Yeah.
On the side.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. All right.
but the where the field house is where the soccer field was, and Jim alluded to that. They were building that, I guess, his senior year, and so then the soccer team and the lacrosse team played on the field behind the graveyard, and then that's where the basketball arena is.
So wait,
So
where was your lacrosse field when you guys played exactly? Was it by the creek? Or was it by? Yeah.
It was between the graveyard and the creek.
Yeah. Okay.
So the soccer team played on the field next to over by Route 15, where the field house is now, and they played there for 2 or 3 years, and then they moved over to the lacrosse field, and we shared that field. Oh, there we go, Donnie.
Yeah. Yes.
You got some glare on there, Don. Put
Better?
there.
Raise it
Yeah,
up
that's
a little
better.
higher and then down.
There you go.
Forward. Yeah. Yep. That's
But
where
that
basketball is right now.
that little chair there and the table, they had the little flip scorecard. We were a low budget operation.
Oh yeah, I know. But
70s.
that was that's what we had to do. It's been a process. All right, so let's go now to Nez. You want to take us through your most memorable moment, and it could honestly be on the football field for all we know.
Well, we had some good, when you say that, when Tommy Sanders says he remembers all his losses, that would have been hard to do on, in 4 years of football at Bucknell. So, but we did have some good wins. We beat Lehigh one year when I was a junior. They were ranked number 1 in the country, and that was a great football game. But the Penn State game had to be the biggest win lacrosse-wise. And the biggest disappointment lacrosse-wise was we lost to Delaware 2 years in a row in the East Coast Conference Championship game by, I think, 1 goal each year. But yeah, I just want to, before they mute me, make a comment about Coach Jay. And I got on tonight, as you know, Coach, accidentally, so I got to see Coach Jay. But I've seen him. He's come and, I don't know if he's driving anymore. I haven't seen him in 4 or 5 years, but he would come every year down and have lunch with me on his way to somewhere. And we would talk, and it's so special when you have somebody that remembers you or coached you or knew you, instead of telling your kids how great you were, have, some coach come down and talk to you. But what I wanted to say about Coach Jay is I never learned about Coach Jay and, his native blood until after he used to come down and have those lunches with me. And, the barriers that guy overcame just to be, the lacrosse coach and a football coach at Bucknell, and then the other things. And he talks about, he would teach me about the reservation and things that I had no idea when I was, 18, 19, 20 years old. To me, he was just, he was my coach. But, it's really amazing what he has accomplished in his lifetime beyond lacrosse. And I think about it a lot. And it's just, that's probably my most memorable lesson, learn about the people that are important to you. And when you I don't know how many of you guys have ever sat down with him and talked about it, but, he's got a place on the reservation that he can go build a house. I mean, there's a reservation. Because of his bloodlines, he has certain rights, but, he's always worked his butt off and, lived in Lewisburg and loved Bucknell. And there are a lot of reasons for him not to work as hard as he did, and he did. And total respect for him for everything he's done.
Awesome.
And all the kids he's touched on the way,
Very true. Don, do you have one you want to share?
I got a couple that are memorable, and it's funny that we've talked about that 76 Penn State game because it's one that first comes to mind. And I don't remember the lunch beforehand, but I do remember that one of my high school buddies was playing for Penn State. And I remember going over to the locker room before the game to just say hello. And he was gloating about the fact that they got an invitation to the NCAAs. And I just was I was pissed off. And I must say, I don't remember a lot about the game, except I felt like we just played a really good ball control game. And it was a really great win. And it was nice to just kick them in the where. The other item about the program was, if we had a 500 season, we had a decent year, right? We played against some really good schools and played against some really good players. A lot of All-American players, which was pretty cool. Personally, there was one school that I love to hate, and it was the Washington College freshman year. I don't think I went to the bar. Maybe I did, but I remember the night before we stayed in that like a bunkhouse, and went to a bar or something on campus, and a bunch of students realized we were there, and somebody asked, well, who plays crease defense? I was brought in the conversation, and they just started getting all over me about the guy I got to cover. His name is John Cheek, who was already to be the first team Division III All-America, and they just were busting my chops real bad. And the game plan for that game was we're playing man defense, man to man. And I just ended up sitting in his jock strap all day long. And for a guy who had a points average of, I think, 5 point something per game, he had 1 assist. And it was a lot of fun to sort of stick it to him. We got blown out. But we then, the next several games, we played zone, and then senior year, we played one-on-one again. And it was fun to play against the best. And it was fun to be able to find a way to shut down some of their best guys and be able to play with the team to make that sort of stuff happen. And that, to me, playing against Washington College was sort of the big game from my perspective because he was good. And I really enjoyed trying to take care of business. And those were my memories out of that.
Hey, Donnie, you remember Washington College and Hobart? They were Division III, but that was a name only. They were 2 of the top 10 teams.
They were 1 and 2 interchangeable Division III. They were probably top 6, 7, or 8, maybe if they were Division I. Yeah, they were good.
Yep.
Yep.
They scored a lot of goals on us.
Yep.
Well, yeah, I remember going down to Chestertown as a Hobart guy. That was always a grudge match. A lot of tradition there.
One of the things that, Sid, had these guys scouted, and we talked about preparation before, and, scouting report, given the opportunity, he can score. But, we didn't have the players that they did, and we couldn't in practice simulate what they were going to do. I mean, we would try, but they moved the ball so much faster than us, and it was, they had the depth that we just didn't have.
Well, I'll tell you, you mentioned, I also want to mention, Sid's scouting reports were really valuable, because I would always look for the guys that only go one way and make sure I know which numbers are the guys that go one way. And invariably you could play it that way. And that insight that he got, wherever he got it from, were really helpful to be able to shut down certain guys, because they're just, what strengths and weaknesses. How do you really take advantage of somebody's weaknesses if I'm playing defense? And his scouting reports were, at least from my standpoint, they were very helpful. God bless him, how he made them happen.
Yeah, well, that's football coach in him as well. Always prepared. This next question, just in an effort to keep this thing moving, question number 6 was, if there was one guy in particular that you wanted to really give a shout out to or talk about, if anybody feels compelled to really talk about somebody, feel free, or I'm gonna move on to the last question here. But there may be a situation where, and I know that I think Breeze mentioned a guy earlier, maybe Aldo, but if anybody has anybody, otherwise we'll go to the next one. Yeah, Don.
There were 3 guys that had an impact on me. One was Kevin Cook, defenseman. He was 1976, graduated early 1975. Class act, very professional. I really admired how he handled himself on and off the field. And the other 2 were Gary Tubman and Gary Allen. Both class guys, very professional, very helpful, both on and off the field for me. And I really greatly appreciated their insight and coaching and mentoring.
That's great to know. I know I've met both those guys, both those Garys, Tubman and GA, Gary Allen.
Yeah, I just, I mentioned before, Pete and I were the first start of freshman year, we were the only freshmen that were starting. And there were a lot of seniors that a very senior laden team. And those guys took us under our wing, and we could have been the weak link, but Don keeps talking about, embracing your teammates and getting everybody to work together. But that defense was, my freshman year was Donnie, that was you on the crease, and Mark Ferraldo, who was very intense, but he was all business, and John Grover, who was, he was great to play with. He was, I think, a graduate student. I don't know what he was. He was a 50-year guy, but guys, in front of me, and then all those midfielders you mentioned, Gary Tubman and Jay Paterno and Gary Allen and Nez was one of the elder statesmen. And I'll just share a story that we played in some preseason tournament up at Syracuse, and it was like 4 teams, and I forget who we beat in the first round. That was Colgate or somebody here, and then we played Syracuse in the sort of the championship of this preseason tournament, and I had never let in more than 6 goals in any game in high school, and I only lost 1 game in high school. And that's the game I let in 6 goals, and we ended up, Syracuse beat us pretty good, and I'm sitting there and I'm really upset, and I felt I let everybody down. And Jim Nesbitt, you came up to me, you called me kid. You didn't call me Swiss cheese at that point. That was later on, you said to me, you know what? You're going to let up a lot of goals playing at Bucknell. Don't let it worry. Don't let it worry about it. Don't worry about it. And that's, that was great advice, because there was some games, man, I got shelled. Sore neck from turning breaking the ball out of the cage.
I didn't start calling him Swiss cheese until he was really good.
Right.
That
And
Syracuse team,
he was always
Tommy,
really good, but I didn't call him Swiss cheese if he had a bad game. I'd call him Swiss cheese if he had a really good game.
You
that
mentioned
Syracuse
John Grover.
team was awesome, as I recall. They were really strong. It was amazing.
Tom, you mentioned John Grover, and his roommate was it Dave Ryan or John Ryan?
Dave Ryan, yes.
Dave Ryan.
He was another one of the senior midfielders.
Yeah, and I told you before, I was like, probably shouldn't have gotten into Bucknell at academics, and spring season rolled around, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there with like 3 Fs and a D, and I'm thinking I'm not coming back. And John Grover and Dave Ryan called me to their apartment on campus. I thought they were going to make me drink with them. I was like, I can't do this. And they said, look, tell us what the class is, tell us what's happening. I told them the whole story. They got me tutors that were seniors or juniors, and they got me through, and I ended up getting like all C's or whatever. But the two of them, they got me through freshman year, because I was on a string at one point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, Pete and I roomed together when,
You knew it.
yeah. I mean,
Hey Pete, that's not too good when two of the courses were pass failed, freshman year.
but I don't know about you, Pete, but I felt an enormous amount of pressure that my freshman year, that there were a lot of people counting on me, and was I ready for it? And my parents, my dad was, as mentioned before, he was a professor, but he was on sabbatical over in Europe. So my parents were over there, and so I had nobody to turn to. So it was an interesting year, freshman year.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's clear to me that the 70s group here, you guys really set a strong foundation. The 60s guys, they were just trying to, get the team started, and this group of 70 guys, listening to these stories against Syracuse and Rutgers and Penn State and all these teams, and Washington College and Hobart, to be that competitive and be in those battles, and then for Breeze to get shelled and keep coming back for more. I just want to thank you guys, because your ability to be competitive allowed the program then to grow in the 80s and the 90s. And this is when Bucknell Lacrosse really started to get on the map, clearly. And you guys made it really tough to play against. And I'm sure a lot of good teams didn't want to play Bucknell, because you weren't going to get much credit if you beat them, but they were going to be a tough out, and you guys were going to be scrappy and make it a really tough day for them. So having said that, we'll finish with the last question. What do you think of the state of Bucknell Lacrosse today, and what kind of advice would you give me moving forward? And we'll start with Don, with Sheik.
Frank, it's a really competitive world, and I don't know how you or coaches today in college do it. It's 12 months a year. It's 24/7. You're in season. When you're out of season, you're in season. You're constantly recruiting, leveraging all the contacts. You got to, finding the players, wooing the players, I guess is the job number one. At the end of the day, it's a game of people, and how do you find the right people? Good, bad, or indifferent, you got to build a team that meshes, and how do you leverage all the networking to find the right people? That's your world, and boy, it's a challenge. I just encourage you to. I assume you already are hooked into all sorts of alum that are still playing, or got family that are still involved, or whatever. I think you just got to continue to push that. It's been fun to watch. I haven't gotten to too many games. Last game I went to was when you guys beat Yale up at Yale, and that freezing night.
It was cold and windy.
That was
Wind.
proud.
I was there. I didn't realize, Don, you were there.
We had head covers on. It was freaking cold.
It was the wind that was horrible that night. Oh.
But I was very proud to be a Bucknellian. That was a heck of a game. And for Yale to go on and win the NCAAs that year, kudos to you and the whole team and everybody. And continue to build on that is just fabulous.
Thank you. We'll go to Jim Nesbitt.
Hey, Coach, I think you're doing a great, when I got out of Bucknell, and and through the football program, and I was close to some people at Villanova. They had just quit football and they'd come back and they started doing studies. And what I learned when I left Bucknell was Bucknell had the lowest budget for football and all their athletics of any team that we played. And, you know, for you to be able to recruit and bring quality kids in, and what I've seen over the years is your GPA of your team is just, you know, I'm not there, so, and Pete's not there, so it's really high. You know, it's an amazing story, and you've got an uphill battle because it starts at the top, and the president of the university has to, you know, whoever that might be, has to support the athletics program and not think of it as just they have to put a little bit of money into it. And quite frankly, comparatively speaking, lacrosse is not a very expensive sport to run compared to some of the other sports. I mean, and so it would be, I'd love to see you get a little more support from the top, and because you could get players. You get players in Lewisburg. You got a great university there, yeah, and you do a great job with the players you get, but you can get more players. I mean, you know, those guys 50 miles to the west of you are making a really, really big splash. And, you know, you can get some of those players. I know you can, because I know who they are and I know the schools they're coming from, right?
Yeah.
And, but you need, you know, I don't know what we would do as alum to help you get that kind of support, but a little more support from the top, and I think you would, you'd obviously be able to just, you're about what, 2 or 3 players away every year from being in the playoffs? Would you say that?
Yeah, that's about right, Jim. You know, and we're thankful for what the university does do for us, and the fact that we're in the football stadium, I think, is a huge plus for us. And you know, we're able to raise a lot of money, and then of course spend that money, which is not always the case. So, but yeah, we definitely need, you know, a couple blue chip guys would definitely put us over the top, and we're working hard every year to secure those guys. So thank you. Breeze, any thoughts on the program today and advice moving forward?
Yeah, unfortunately, I wasn't able to get into any game. I was planning on the Loyola game this year. You guys were 5-1 going into that game. But every game day, you know, I have defensemen that were playing with me. You know, when I was older, Larry Fletcher, Jim Gilbert, and also Stu Berger, who was the goalie after me. We have a group text going, you know, throughout a running text throughout the whole game as we watch them on live stream. So we were, Stu and Jim and I were gonna meet down at Loyola. Did not get to any games last year, 2019, but I saw 3 games in 2018. The game Don mentioned up at Yale, that, oh my goodness, the wind that night. But that was a huge win when O'Brien, what was his first name? Scored that.
Sean.
Yeah, Sean O'Brien had that really, really nice goal. And your goalie made some, Clipstein made some outstanding saves in the last minute and in the first minute of overtime, because you were man down at that point. I saw you beat Loyola that year. I went down to visit my daughter, and then I saw you beat Lehigh there. So I saw 3 nice wins, 2018. One of the, you know, the consistency. It was kind of like when we were playing. That you know, you'd have a really good season, and then, you know, maybe things would fall off for a year, and then you know, as more players came in, you'd you know, have a better season. So you know, the one thing that amazes me that now is that the lacrosse starts in February, first week in February. I think that's third. And they all, I don't know about you guys, but when I was playing, we had very few weeks where we played Saturday and Saturday. Most of the time we played twice a week, and I loved that. The weeks that we only played one game, and you know, we only played on Saturday, Sid ran us into the ground, and it was just, you know, shot after shot after shot, and Those were hard practices. And so I hated the weeks where, the 1 or 2 weeks a year where we only had one game a week, because those were, those were intense practices. So I don't know how you do it. I see you've lost a little bit more hair than the last time I saw you. All these 1-goal games.
That's right.
I don't know how they're nail batters. Even with me watching in the stands, I'm nervous, and you're out there on the sidelines. So, you're winning close games against some really good teams, and but also with a very big roster. You got 45 guys. One question for you is how do you keep half the team engaged when a lot of them aren't seeing significant minutes? That must be really hard as a coach to recruit all these guys and knowing that some of them aren't going to play a lot. So
yeah, that's a great question, Breeze. I mean, we work hard at that, and really the fall ball is the opportunity for us, because everyone's a one-sport athlete now, and we play every day in the fall, and so that's our biggest grind is fall ball. We scrimmage every single day for 5 weeks straight, 1-on-1, 6-on-6, full field scrimmages, and we coach on the fly. So the guys get a lot of playing there. And then when we get in the season, it's like football. It's 1 game a week. And, Mondays is our film and getting loose and working on our mistakes from Saturday. And then Tuesday we get after it and play each other and maybe do some conditioning. And then Wednesday we're preparing for our opponent and, install a lot of things. And then Thursday we work on them. And then Friday we just polish them up and go very, very light. And so it's not like the old days. I mean, we don't crush them during the week, and we rarely have 2-game weeks. And those actually take a lot out of us now, because there's so much preparation for each game. We literally have 14 or 15-page scouting reports now for an opponent. And so when we go Wednesday, Saturday, and these guys have to memorize the scouting report, and we give them tests on it. And so it's a real grind. When we go Wednesday, Saturday, mentally, it really drains the guys. So, but we figure it out. So Don, did you there? You're on mute.
I think you got me. I think it's Peter.
I got you already. All right, so Pete, bring us home, my man.
Well, a couple things. First, the program's in great shape. The school's in great shape. Todd, I don't know how many schools are doing what you're doing right now, but this kind of stuff it makes a huge difference for everybody, and it'll have it's going to affect a lot of other people along the way that you don't even know yet, and so it's a great thing that you're doing. Coach, you do what Coach Jameson did in a way. You have found a niche of putting a team on the field that you never know what they're going to do on defense, but they know what you're going to do on offense, and you everywhere you move, they're questioning what they're doing. You're one of the few teams left. A 10-man ride makes the games exciting. People want to watch your games. They're not boring. I think you're doing everything you need to do. And then the second thing I wanted to sort of say is this is a little bit of a story, but I was watching my son play Little League Baseball, and it was at the age where the parents had to do the umping, and this guy gets off the train and he comes up, he's got a suit on, he takes his suit off and he stands up behind the mound and he's calling strikes and balls, but he's trying to do it so the kids play. And it's obvious he wants every kid to get a hit. He wants everyone to, get to participate and at least get something going. And there's this guy sitting in the stands that is screaming at him all the time. And he's yelling about every single call. And after about 2 innings, the guy stops and he goes, "Give me the ball," hands him the ball. He walks over to the guy and he says, "You know something? You could do such a better job. Here's the ball, take it." And he walks off and goes home. And everyone clapped because it's like, you got to be kidding me. And, you're a head coach. I was a head coach for 10 years. You know what is the pressure of it is. And the best thing that we could do for you is just say, do your job the best way you can. You're committed. You want to do everything you can. Sure, you'd love to have 2 or 3 more players. And I think in time you're going to get that. But you're doing what you can with the teams you have, and you're 15th in the nation and maybe breaking into into playing Syracuse or whoever it is for the playoffs or whatever you're going to do. I think that's fantastic. The program's in good shape and the school's doing what's supposed to do. And, as long as you keep doing that, I think good things are going to happen. You're going to have those moments that matter.
Beautiful. Thanks, Pete. And thank you, gentlemen. This was really great. And I'm sure a lot of guys from the 70s are going to tune in and watch this next week. Todd, you want to let them know what's going on there? And
can I interrupt you, Frank, just for 1 second? Make a plug.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned the guys tuning in. I know I give money on a regular basis, and for all you alums out there, I don't think this is going viral. So the only people are going to be watching it are the people who care. But the program needs your support, and you can on the homepage there of the lacrosse team, you can see who gives money and who doesn't give money. So all you people who I don't see on that list, think about opening your checkbook because Bucknell Lacrosse, could use your support, your financial support. So
well said, Reese. We have to fundraise about 85% of what we spend on the team in terms of paying assistants, getting on the bus, hotels, equipment, you name it. And we do rely on the alumni support. So that's a great point. Thank you.
Wow. Well, Tom, let me tell you, Tom, first of all, you could do my job, because when I put those fundraising lists on those web pages about 10 years ago, that's exactly what I was hoping people would say. Hey, my teammate's not on there and he should be, or I'm not on there and I should be. So thanks for actually pointing that out. And the other thing I wanted to say, Tom, is based on your winning percentage of 2018, if we're playing games this spring, you need to be at a lot of our games, because you didn't lose at any of the ones you were at 2018. So Coach Fed would appreciate you making the trip no matter where we're playing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, seriously. One of the points that Jim made earlier about the school supporting the program and why can't we get more support? And it's a tough issue, because Bucknell has been and will always be an academically oriented institution first, and the budgets reflect that. They always will, they always have. But to your point, when you did that research and you saw that Bucknell's budget was down the bottom, honestly, they haven't changed much over the years. And it's a tribute to Coach Fed, to Coach Jay, and to you guys that the team does as well as it does and competes like it does year in and year out in the top 20 in the country. And it would not be that way whatsoever if it weren't for the support that our alums give the program, and particularly our parent group too. Our parents are very supportive of the young men in the program. And last night when Frank and I had Lou Kissling on, what Lou did by starting the endowment for the lacrosse program, the Jameson Endowment, that's going to go a long way to make sure that men's lacrosse never goes away at Bucknell. And in this day and age, when COVID is affecting things financially across the athletic world, there's a real fear of programs being dropped, and ones that are endowed and have that kind of support are gonna last. And again, it's a tribute to you guys. So I want to thank you again for being on the call tonight. I want to thank you for what you all did while you were on the field here, wearing the orange and blue, and what you've done for our student athletes since then. And for those of you that were watching tonight and tuning in, thanks for doing so, and go Bison.